Hamilton admitted to being surprised by how difficult it has been to adapt to the SF-25. After 12 seasons with Mercedes, his driving style doesn't quite fit with the Ferrari car. In FP2, Hamilton was 0.42s behind Leclerc, an eternity in F1. Honestly, I thought I was further along than I was, but when I got to practice, I realized I still have a long way to go. That gap in qualifying left him in 8th place, while Leclerc was 7th. It's not the performance either Ferrari or Hamilton had hoped for. Lewis Hamilton arrived at Ferrari with high expectations, but qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix made it clear that his adaptation process is proving much more complicated than expected. After 12 seasons with Mercedes, where every detail of the car was fine-tuned to his driving style, he now faces a considerable learning curve with the SF-25. In the first free practice sessions, Hamilton showed signs of struggling to find a competitive rhythm. In FP2, he finished 0.42 seconds behind his teammate Charles Leclerc, a significant gap in Formula One. Although the gap had been even greater in the first session, at 0.6 seconds, progress was minimal. After qualifying, Hamilton acknowledged that he underestimated how challenging this adaptation process would be. He thought he was more advanced in his understanding of the SF-25, but the reality on the track was different. He found a car that didn't respond the way he was used to and required adjustments to his driving style. Changing teams not only means learning how to handle a new car, but also adapting to a new work structure. At Mercedes, Hamilton had a team of engineers with whom he had developed an almost intuitive communication over the years. He knew exactly what adjustments to request to improve his performance. At Ferrari, he is still at a stage where he relies heavily on data provided by the engineers and the available technical information, which prevents him from making decisions with the same speed and precision. One of the main challenges has been the difference in the car's dynamics. The SF-25 doesn't behave the same way as the Mercedes cars, especially in how it reacts to braking and corner entry. During qualifying, Hamilton constantly found himself on the limits of grip, struggling to find stability on his fastest lap. Despite these issues, there is confidence within the Ferrari team that adaptation is only a matter of time. It has been mentioned that similar situations have occurred with other drivers in the past, and the key for Hamilton will be to adjust his approach based on the car's characteristics. However, the pressure is high, as the competitive level on the 2025 grid leaves no room for long learning curves. With the race ahead and the possibility of rain adding to the uncertainty, Hamilton faces a dual challenge: improving his understanding of the SF-25 and achieving a solid performance in conditions he has yet to experience with Ferrari. Since joining Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton has had to face an unexpected challenge: modifying his driving style to adapt to a car that doesn't behave like those he's driven in the past. For more than a decade at Mercedes, his technique was completely in sync with the car's characteristics, allowing him to fully exploit his aggressive braking and his ability to manage the car's rear end. However, the SF-25 responds differently, which has complicated his adaptation process. One of the key elements of Hamilton's style is his preference for aggressive corner entry, relying on the car's stability to brake later than his rivals and generate speed on the exit. This requires a rear end that can withstand sudden movements without losing grip, something that the Mercedes cars consistently provided. At Ferrari, the situation is completely different. The SF-25 has a setup that prioritizes the car's overall stability, but requires a more progressive approach to corner entry. Charles Leclerc, who is already accustomed to this type of behavior, has developed a driving style that maximizes the car's performance in these conditions. His technique is based on making a light initial turn before completing the rotation with a more controlled movement, allowing him to maintain balance and minimize tire wear. For Hamilton, this difference in car philosophy means his driving habits must change. Trying to replicate his aggressive style with the SF-25 can lead to instability, especially in low and medium speed corners, where the car tends to react less predictably when the rear end is pushed. During qualifying, this became evident with constant steering corrections and difficulties finding an optimal line. Another technical aspect that has caused complications is brake distribution. At Mercedes, Hamilton had complete confidence in how the car responded to brake pressure, a key factor in his ability to attack corners with surgical precision. At Ferrari, the combination of different brakes and the power unit's response to energy recovery have made his adaptation process slower. Small details, such as brake balance at different stages of the lap, can make the difference between a solid qualifying session and a complicated session. Beyond the technical aspect, the difference in driving style also affects the communication between Hamilton and his engineering team. At Mercedes, after so many years of experience, he could accurately describe what he needed to feel comfortable in the car. Now, at Ferrari, he's still in an exploratory phase, trying different setups without being sure of the best direction to take. This was reflected in qualifying in Australia, where he had to use an extra set of soft tires in Q1 and still finished far from the fight for the top spots. The challenge isn't just finding speed, but also rebuilding his confidence in the car. In a grid as competitive as the 2025 grid, losing tenths in each sector can make a big difference in the standings. Adjusting his driving style isn't something that will happen immediately, but each track session is an opportunity to better understand the demands of the SF-25 and get closer to the performance Ferrari expects from it. The possibility of rain at the Australian Grand Prix adds a new challenge for Lewis Hamilton in his adaptation process to Ferrari. Not only does he face the difficulties of understanding the SF-25 in normal conditions, but now he must deal with a scenario in which he has never tested this car. With the weather forecast predicting rain for the race, Hamilton acknowledged that this will be an even more complicated test than he expected. One of the most obvious problems is his lack of experience with the Ferrari's behavior in wet conditions. Since taking up the SF-25, all test sessions and races have been in dry conditions, meaning he hasn't had the opportunity to evaluate how the car responds on intermediate or extreme wet tires. In Formula 1, knowing the limits of the car in these conditions is crucial, as grip is drastically reduced and every small mistake can cost positions or even result in an incident. The change of team has also brought with it differences in the technical setup that can influence its performance on wet tracks. One of the points Hamilton mentioned with concern was the use of Brembo brakes at Ferrari, in contrast to the endless brakes he used throughout his time at Mercedes. This technical detail may seem minor, but in wet conditions, the braking system's performance is even more important. Pedal sensitivity, brake distribution, and the way the brakes generate heat can all affect the car's stability, especially during hard braking before tight corners. In addition to the technical aspect, the uncertainty surrounding electronic adjustments and rain-specific setups adds to the obstacles he will face in the race. At Mercedes, Hamilton was perfectly familiar with which settings to activate in the rain, from engine maps to the differential and traction controls. Now, at Ferrari, he doesn't yet have the same level of confidence in the system. Another key factor is visibility. In rainy races, visibility is drastically reduced due to the water kicked up by the tires of the cars ahead. For a driver who is not fully adapted to his car, this can be an even bigger problem, as any incorrect adjustment during braking or corner exit can lead to a loss of control. The SF-25 has proven to be a fast car in the dry, but it remains unclear how it will perform in wet conditions under race conditions. The key for Hamilton will be to quickly regain confidence in the car's grip, manage tire temperature well, and avoid mistakes that could put him out of contention. The uncertainty surrounding the weather turns the race into both an opportunity and a threat. If the rain evens out the performances between the teams, Hamilton could leverage his experience in tricky conditions to advance positions. However, if he can't adapt quickly to the car in the wet, his debut with Ferrari in Melbourne could become even more complicated than it has been so far. Lewis Hamilton hasn't had the expected start to the season. After a difficult qualifying in Australia, the big question is whether he can turn things around and adapt quickly to the Ferrari SF-25, or if this transition will be a longer process than anticipated. One of the key factors determining his progress will be how quickly he understands the car's behavior and adjusts his driving style accordingly. Ferrari has made it clear that its main objective with Hamilton is not for him to adapt immediately, but rather for him to build a strong relationship with the team and understand every technical aspect of the car in detail. However, the competition on the 2025 grid doesn't leave much room for extended adaptation periods. Hamilton's biggest challenge right now is his lack of confidence in the car. At Mercedes, after so many years, he could push the car to the limit with complete confidence in how it would respond through every corner and under every braking point. At Ferrari, he's still in the process of exploring. This translates into inconsistent lap times and small corrections that can cost him precious tenths of a second in qualifying in the race. Another point of pressure comes from within the team itself. Charles Leclerc already has an intimate knowledge of the SF-25, and although he didn't achieve a brilliant qualifying performance in Australia either, he remains the internal reference point at Ferrari. Hamilton not only has to adapt to a new car, but he also needs to match and surpass his teammate, something that has historically been key to his success. In the past, Hamilton has shown he can elevate his game when facing strong domestic rivals, but in this case, his lack of experience with the car leaves him at a disadvantage initially. The SF-25's performance compared to his rivals will also influence his adaptation process. If Ferrari manages to develop the car effectively throughout the season, Hamilton will have more room to find his rhythm and make up ground. However, if the car remains a step behind teams like McLaren and Red Bull, any mistakes or lack of confidence in his handling could cost him valuable points. Regarding Ferrari's strategy, the team has made it clear that its approach with Hamilton is long-term. This isn't just about a transition season, but about building a solid foundation for competing in the future. The 7-time world champion's experience is an invaluable asset for Ferrari, but the key will be finding the balance between allowing him time to adapt and maximizing his performance in each race. The upcoming Grand Prix will be crucial in assessing how quickly he can close the gap to the leaders and whether he can become a real contender for the championship. In Formula One, adaptation times vary depending on the driver and team, but what is clear is that Hamilton cannot afford a full season of testing and fine-tuning if he wants to compete at the top of the grid. The Australian Grand Prix was only the first chapter of his time at Ferrari. There are still many races ahead, and the big question is how long it will take him to reach his best version with the SF-25. Hamilton's history in Formula One has been marked by his adaptability and resilience in the face of challenges. Now, with a new team and a car he still doesn't fully understand, he faces one of the toughest tests of his career. The Australian Grand Prix was the first major test for Lewis Hamilton in his new role with Ferrari, and the results have left many questions unanswered. His 8th place in the standings shows that he is still far from feeling completely comfortable with the SF-25. A lack of confidence in the car, differences in driving style, and the technical adjustments he still needs to understand have been determining factors in this difficult start to the season. On the one hand, Ferrari remains calm and confident that Hamilton's adaptation is only a matter of time. The team has made it clear that its goal is to ensure the British driver feels comfortable within the team and understands every technical aspect of the car before demanding immediate results. However, Formula One is not a sport that allows for long learning periods. Every point counts, and with a grid as competitive as the 2025 grid, losing ground in the early races could jeopardize any title aspirations. The big question is how Hamilton will respond in the upcoming races. His track record shows he has overcome adverse situations in the past, but this is a different circumstance. He faces a team with a different work philosophy, a car that doesn't naturally suit his driving style, and strong internal competition from Charles Leclerc. Furthermore, rivals such as McLaren and Red Bull have demonstrated superior performance, adding an extra layer of pressure on Ferrari to quickly find a solution that will allow them to be more competitive. Hamilton's future with Ferrari will depend on how quickly he can close the gap on his rivals and prove he's still a driver capable of fighting for victories. The talent and experience are there, but the question remains, will he be able to adapt before it's too late? Now is the time to hear different perspectives. Some believe the adaptation will take longer than expected, while others are confident that Hamilton will be able to find his best version in just a few races. The season is just beginning and everything can change in a matter of weeks. The current situation leaves many unanswered questions. Do you think Hamilton will be able to adapt quickly to Ferrari, or will it be a difficult season? Will he be able to challenge Leclerc within the team? Does Ferrari really have a car capable of competing with McLaren and Red Bull? Every opinion offers a different perspective on this new chapter in Hamilton's career, and the debate is more alive than ever.